Chapter 10. This chapter is about agriculture, biotechnology, and the future of food. The case study is about genetically modified corn that was found in Mexico in isolated farms. And these farms had not planted genetically modified crops. You can see it's way down here, pretty far from the United States. But the researchers that have found it believe that the wind blew this pollen from the United States down there. So this is an issue because we don't want every crop grown of a certain kind of food to be identical, to be clones. And genetically modified crops are clones of each other. And so we want this diversity because it helps us with food security, with making sure that if there's a disease that goes through the crops, then we have some genetic diversity in different parts of the world, or actually we store them as seed banks. And so these are important issues that we think about. On page 245, you need to know these pieces of information that are not in your book, but they have occurred before on the AP test. The top agricultural products in the world, number 1 is sugarcane. Not so much grown in the US, Hawaii a little bit, but mostly grown in Africa and other countries, the Caribbean. The second one is maize, which in the United States we call corn. And for the US, that's our top crop is corn. And then you can see wheat, rice, and potatoes. And for the US, you need to know these in order: corn, soybeans, wheat, and cotton in order. You also need to know, and this is not in your book, that there are regional crops that were traditionally and still grown in certain areas because of climate and rain. So in Europe, we have these crops. Asia, we have rice because Asia gets monsoons, which flood fields, and rice is grown in flooded fields. Corn and wheat for us in North America, Africa, corn and sugarcane, Central and South America, corn and wheat as well. Going on to the next page, page 246, know the definition of food security. Undernourished, overnutrition. Overnutrition is new. That's what's happened in the United States with our overweight and obesity issues. Malnutrition is where you're still eating food, but you're not getting certain nutrients, whether it's protein or vitamin C. And then kwashiorkor and marasmus are specific types of malnutrition. We're going to add one called scurvy. There's a V there. And scurvy is a lack of vitamin C that causes swollen gums and loose teeth. So know kwashiorkor, marasmus, and scurvy as specific types of malnutrition. All right, so here the book talks about the Green Revolution. And the Green Revolution has nothing to do with being eco-friendly. We use that word green right now to be like eco-friendly products and taking care of the environment, but that is not the definition for the Green Revolution. It's called green because it grows more food, so more plants that are green. So after World War II, we began to dramatically increase our agricultural productivity through fossil fuel use, through synthetic fertilizers. If you remember back, we learned about the Haber-Bosch process for creating synthetic nitrogen. We also learned how to create pesticides synthetically through, actually a lot of it's out of petroleum oil and other chemicals. And then we also learned about water irrigation, how to pump water out of the ground and sprinkle your crops. If we had known how to do this, we would not have ever had a Dust Bowl back in the 1930s, but we didn't know how to do this. The technology wasn't there at the time. All right, so we have a positive and negative list for the Green Revolution. Positives, it saved countries from starvation with their increase in population. It allowed us to double and triple the amount of food grown on an acre. And so places like India did not have massive starvation as they went to over 1 billion people, and same with China. It reduced poverty So what that means is you can grow more food on the same acre of land and make more money, sometimes 2 and 3 times more money. And it allowed no new land needed for farming, which means more land is saved for habitat and wildlife. Some negatives: we have water pollution from fertilizers that cause eutrophication and from pesticides too, which can cause cancer. Loss of biodiversity in your crops and livestock, which means less nutrition because of the lack of variety in our crops and livestock. We have increased air pollution from tractors and then from the nitrates that are sprayed, which is your fertilizer. So AP tests on FRQs often ask you about positives and negatives, so make sure you know both. Know this figure and caption about monoculture here, and monocultures are more susceptible to pests. We have a modern green revolution that's not in your book, but the modern one that you need to know about includes genetically modified crops. And why do they genetically modify crops? Well, some of them make tastier food. Not all of them, but some of them do. A lot of them give them higher yields. That means more grown per acre, so you make more money. Some they develop to be drought resistant, which is a good thing. Some they develop to be pest resistant, which means you don't have to spray as much pesticides or also herbicides to kill plants either. And then another part of the modern green revolution is food irradiation, which means that we zap it with radiation to kill any pathogens. On this page, know the definition of biofuels. And a biofuel is basically a fuel made out of a living thing. One example is ethanol, which is made from corn in the US and has caused food prices to increase, because if you are actually turning corn into fuel for a car, because some cars run on ethanol, not so much here in California, but in the Midwest, well, then there's less food to eat, and it causes the prices of the food to increase as well.